Biting my clothes to keep from screaming, taking pills to keep from dreaming. I want to break something important. I want to kick my dad in the shins. I was referring to the present and past tense. It was the only way that I could survive it. I want to close my head in the car door. I want to sing this song like I'm dying. Tell me if it was so bipolar. I need something so, I need something so, I need something so.
Welcome to the 3% Podcast, the bi-weekly podcast from Open Letter at 3 and 3%. This is Chad Post from Open Letter, and I'm joined as always by Tom Roberge from Riff Raff.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. A little still recovering from an independent bookstore day, but...
And so I think we should start there. How did that go for you guys?
Look, I've been a little, I don't want to say cynical, but unclear as to what the celebration, for lack of a better term, has sort of meant in the larger public surrounding independent bookstores. And I will say this year it finally felt like it's a thing that the public knows about, beyond just the people, in the loop of promoting these things, to each other, basically. We had a lot of customers, many of whom I'll probably never see again, or maybe not till next year, who came in because we did a sort of passport thing around the state of Rhode Island, and people had to go to 14 of the 15 stores, get their passport stamped and that sort of thing. So we saw a lot of people we hadn't seen before who, said they love their favorite stores, down where they live in Waverly or Westerly or whatever. And, then they're coming up to Providence and they go over to Barrington and all these sorts of things. So it was good. And, we had a very good day business-wise, and people were very enthused about the whole thing. And, it definitely seems like it's finally starting to take off in the culture and become a thing that people know about. If you're a reader, it seems like you've heard the message about Independent Bookstore Day.
So there is a new bookstore here. That's a kids bookstore called Hippocampo. Not mentioned on that when I bought that book through IndieBound did not reference Hippocampo, but it exists for the time being. And they had a TV spot on the news about Independent Bookstore Day featuring Hippocampo books.
Interesting.
Local TV, but when you're saying like it got out there, like that would be, this store has been open for like a month. Like the store opened when I was at AWP. So it's not like it's like, established, but like somehow the local news figured out those two things, that A, a bookstore exists, and B, that there's Independent Bookstore Day, and put those two together and did a little segment. That's impressive.
It is impressive.
I have a little bit of news related to that is interesting. So that I think this is my cynical part, but it's not related to Independent Bookstore Day, which I want to come back to. But the local newspaper here is the Democrat and Chronicle. And a few weeks ago, I was out at a couple of events and met this woman who writes for them occasionally. Or used to more frequently than she does now. And I can go to long pains to make fun of the Democrat and Chronicle for not being a real newspaper. It really isn't. It doesn't care about news. It cares about covering beer, which is fine, but it's not news oriented. It's not really journalism. It's just like silly. It's just silly. It's like it makes me sad for the future of local newspapers. And she really drove this point home because she wanted to write an article about the new director of Writers and Books, because the old director, Kyle, left, and they hired a new person who used to run Kane Cabum or Cave Canum, and who is like a pretty big deal. And so she wanted to profile her, and the Democrat and Chronicle said, no, we're not going to cover that, because the last time we wrote about the director of Writers and Books, we only got 1,200 clicks online for the article, and that's not enough to justify covering that bit of news.
So that's it? They're just done doing that kind of thing?
Yep. Which is like the worst. That made me just sad for journalism, because that's not journal. You can't claim to be a journalist then and use those kind of metrics as your decision making on what gets written about. Those two things can't be this. You can't have both of those.
Right. Well, the division between those sort of what's the word I'm looking for here? The division between those sort of ways of analyzing the success of a journalistic enterprise, a newspaper, they used to be separate, right? And now they sort of joined forces, and everyone's aware of everything at all times. And journalists no longer have this mandate to just go find news and act independently of whether or not the newspaper is being read. That's usually left to someone else's
Yeah.
job, right? Like now it's all the same. Everyone has to be aware of everything, and it's super annoying. But I mean, I understand the business impetus behind this, but I agree with you that morally it's kind of a bullshit stance to take.
Yeah, if you want to be a business and want to be like BuzzFeed or Gawker or whatever, like go, that's fine. If you're going to make claims to being like protected under like as a journalist that's doing this great work for your community, then you have to adhere to other standards.
Right. Or at least most of the time.
Yeah. Or at least like, I mean, you still have a printed paper. You don't know how many people read that. You know how many people purchase it or how many copies are in circulation. So to base something on metrics that are digital only might be going too far too, because like when there was no online metrics, the printed paper, you could include articles that you'd be like, well, this maybe isn't a front page article, but it's worth noting because people in our community need to know about X. So we'll put it on page 10, we'll put it in the normal standard paper. People get that paper. We don't know what sections they read or don't read, but that's fine. We're still doing good for the community. And this alters that. But this is getting off track of the Independent Bookstore Day. But you said you guys had a passport. What other promotions did you guys do for Independent Bookstore Day?
So we don't do so in case anyone doesn't know, so there's an Independent Bookstore Day, and it's all like an organization, right? That's all sort of run by the ABA partners with Ingram. And if you participate, i.e. buy things, you are sort of included in their promotions when they list bookstores in a particular area or whatever. I don't know. I've never actually looked into it, mainly because the stuff that's available is this sort of like one-off stuff that's only going to be available that day. But because they're catering to, the 1,000 bookstores that participate across the country, it's very like, I don't want to say generic, but they're trying to make a lot of people happy. And so it's the kind of stuff that we just would never sell. And so we don't, even though the minimum is quite low, like you only have to spend like, I think $50 or something like that. The stuff it wouldn't make sense in our store. We probably wouldn't sell it.
What kind of stuff do you mean?
I mean like little, like special editions of books, whether they're like short stories that are specially written for that day, like it's released early as apart from the story collection, and it's going to be in 6 months or whatever, and it's only available on that day, and it's by, I don't know, Neil Gaiman or something like that, right? So those kind of things. Or I remember a couple of years ago there was like a poster, like there's a lot of like one sheet kind of broadside sort of things that get made. They're like mugs. There were condoms this year, like shit like that. Half of it is not even like a book, and then the book parts of it tend to be like not bestsellery. They're just not our kind of book. Which, I mean, we're very narrowly focused, so it just wouldn't. What's
funny is like that's the part I'd never heard about, and that was part that I was going to suggest, and some much cooler level than that, because that sounds bad. But like you have independent. What's that?
So we, because we don't do any of that, we had to come up with our own things. So we did this passport thing, which is, I guess there's a prize obviously related to it, which all of the bookstores in Rhode Island that were participating, which I think is most of them.
Do you win a bookstore? That would be awesome. Like the grand prize winner is a bookstore.
Right. So they get like, so the one person that we choose, I think we'll do it tomorrow, will win a $25 gift certificate to all 15 stores, which is, almost $400 worth of gift certificates, which is not insignificant, right? Yeah. So we had a lot of people going around doing that. In our store, we had some books that were on sale that we decided, let's promote these kind of things. And then we had Blind Date with a Book, which is always a popular thing that we sell below, the regular prices just across the board. And then the other thing, we also had a raffle. So if people spent $25, we entered them a raffle. And today, Em and I are going to choose. They're going to win 5 books, which comes out to about $100 prize as well. And then that was it. I mean, we didn't do a ton of stuff last year. We did literary cocktails and whatever. It just turns out that those things are really tricky to get traction for. I do know that some other stores, and I think we'll probably do this next year. Like I know Brad at East Bay Booksellers did a broadside of Ocean Vuong's.
Oh, right. I saw that.
So, and they did that. I mean, that's done completely outside of whatever the ABA's Independent Bookstore Day sort of promotion. And it just, one, I think that's far more interesting because that's truly a one-of-a-kind thing only available at that store. I think we would do something like that next year. One, because that's the kind of thing that I think our customers would like, because we can find something similar to the Ocean Vuong, like something just, interesting, something that would resonate with our customers, but also because we have the community here of people who could print that and get, it's very easy for me to find the people who can do that sort of thing and do it well. And people would appreciate it for the art and for the literary content that it's involved in it. So,
yeah, because I was thinking there are two other variations on this that exist, and they're like the Free Comic Book Day and the Record Store Day. And the Record Store Day is the one that seems most closely related, since you do have like a large online purchasing presence, or Spotify. Like I haven't bought an album, and I can't even think of how long. So they have a reason, like, to get people into the stores it requires something very special, which is not the case for independent bookstores, but at least it's like you're in that vein, I suppose. But they have that.
Wait, before we move on, I do want to talk about independent or Record Store Day, because I have a friend here who owns a record store and I buy records from him. And I was oblivious of when Record Store Day was, and went in like, I don't know, the Wednesday after. And I was just talking to him about like, talk to me, what should I listen to? And he told me, he's like, well, what you're seeing on the wall is a lot of like what's left over from Record Store Day. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, these people put out these records that are meant to be like, it's kind of like with the Independent Bookstore Day stuff. Like they're only available that day, or they come out that day. So people know that they go and find them on that day. And it is definitely a big thing in the record store world, because people who buy records, right? They're not also buying online music or whatever. Like they're into records. They make, a lot of money on that day. And he also told me, he's like, we got picked through. Like his inventory was quite low. He said he had a woman call, and I'm going to totally forget which record it was, but it was like some woman called and was like, do you have a copy of, oh God, what was it? It was something like Aqualung.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I mean, yes, but like, I'm a little too busy to go find it from the inventory right now because it's Independent Record Store Day. And she was on the phone and she said, yeah, I know. I thought, I should probably buy a record. I haven't bought a record in a long time. And that's what she wanted to buy. Like, wow. So it's Record Store Day is like, it both reminds people that records are a thing and gets people to buy records again, and is for like serious record heads who are like looking for that, color vinyl printing of whatever record from the 70s,
Yeah, well, like their list, they have 401 special albums for Record Store Day, some of which seem like they're just reissues or are available that day. But then there's one like Olafur Arnolds, who I absolutely adore, has Remember plus String Quartets, a Record Store Day special edition is available this year. And there's a lot of those.
I've been to record stores where you'll be going through, and like every third record in whatever section will just say like Special Record Store Day edition.
Yep. Like expanded editions that are coming out that day. And see, that's where I was thinking, like, I don't know that it would work like this, but say like we had a book that would either get released, it would have to be something special, but like that you could have like some collaboration between Open Letter and 50 independent bookstores where you got a special thing for Independent Bookstore Day that nobody else did. And that wasn't available through Amazon or through anywhere else. It was just through your stores on that day. Like if there's some coordinated part of that, that might make it even cooler, or take it to another level where there's like a collector vibe to it, or something like that. I think that would be interesting. I would go check something out for that.
I think I agree with that. I think that could be a thing that happens. It's a little weird. It's a little weird with books that we don't have the sort of collector element to new books. Like there are collector rare books, right?
Yeah.
First editions and all that sort of thing. And there are certainly people like we get calls every week or whatever. Do you have this book? Is it a first edition? It's like, okay, sure. You know? But there's not also like this extra layer to that where things are like gilded and in common cases and are different from the regular edition in some way. I think there was an attempt to do this, and there has been attempts at certain times to do this with certain books that generally sort of veer into the world. But in terms of like actual just like literature, it seems like there's never been a way to sort of introduce to the market these really limited edition special versions because people have been unable to figure out a way to make these things actually worth the money that it would require in order to do it in the first place, right?
Yeah, it's probably a simple solution, but another thing that came to mind is the opposite. So, Free Comic Book Day it's always when we're in New York. In New York, when I'm in New York for sales conference, it is Cinco de Mayo and Free Comic Book Day every time. And so it must be this next Saturday. Anyways, they just give out stacks. There's like specially made comics, like I don't even know. I just tried to look online, I couldn't find, but I'm gonna guess like 100. There's maybe even more than that. And you just get stacks of them at the different stores that are given out. So a different variation on that would be, what if like 10 independent presses produced a volume that was like a sample or something special from forthcoming books that they gave away through 50 independent bookstores on Independent Bookstore Day? Like, you give you something to give out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly like giving things out for free, but you know what I mean? Yeah, that's a tough one because the idea being that people would then buy the books down the road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they can buy it. They can buy it, but it's cheap. It's $5. Yeah. We don't
Right.
make any money. It's just you get it at cost and you make $1 or something.
Right.
Something minimal, but that's like specially special for that day, only available that day, only one time, never reprinted.
Right. I mean, if that's what I think can be done, and it would make the effort of promoting the day and the products more collaborative because all of the publishers would get involved in a more specific way as opposed to a sort of whatever overarching, you know, all of the tweets and everything on Saturday from publishers were just like, thank you bookstores, and that's great, but like it wasn't product specific, and maybe they're blocked, I don't know, from promoting the specific products that are available. I mean, obviously the products that are available through Ingram come from publishers. So
yeah, I didn't even see one thing about that. Like even on the website, it says that exists, but there's no like clickable entity to say like which books are special this year. It's just, it doesn't list that.
Yeah.
I can't figure out what's going on. Their website also sucks, surprisingly. At least on my phone. But yeah, I didn't hear about that or see that. But I also kind of tuned out after I made my one independent bookstore tweet about wearing Moon Palace's t-shirt, which has the sloth on top of the books that represents a penis. And then I stopped on Twitter for a while because Twitter's bumming me out.
Well, yes, obviously.
But yeah, something I could see something like that being cool, like a special, like it could be maybe not a broadside, but something that's specially done that's through a series of smaller presses that gives you like a very limited edition that's only available there. I don't think commercial presses can do anything like that because they would be damaging their relationship with Amazon almost directly by saying like we're only going to offer this through this place or through these bookstores. But I feel like independent stores and independent books and publishers could do something together that would make it, you know, kind of cool. And add a layer, add something more.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer personally, just in terms of the way I know that customers shop. I don't want something collaborative. I want you to do something specific.
Oh, okay.
Coffee house to do something specific, and then that way people have something to choose from, and it doesn't seem like because as much as I would like it if more customers were aware of who publishes what and what they do, and we have pretty good customers in terms of they know, what New Directions does and what Open Letter does and what various presses' tastes are. But there aren't that many, and a lot of the people that are coming through the door on Independent Bookstore Day are certainly not going to be super aware of that kind of thing. So if I can put something author specific in their hands,
Yeah.
That's an easier sell.
Oh,
And then
that's easier for me too. I thought that would be you'd want to go the opposite way. That's easy.
no, the more specific something is, it is easier, which I do think might bring us to another thing we wanted to talk about, this playlist thing.
Okay, yeah, you explain to me this playlist thing.
So I'm going to read here from the Publishers Weekly article about this, just to sort of give everyone an overarching sort of view. Consortium of independent, which is a weird word to use. Consortium of independent publishers led by Seven Stories Press has launched Indie Playlist, a program that provides discounts and cash rewards for independent booksellers who order from a rotating list of titles. Besides Seven Stories, participating publishers are Europa and Catapult, all of whom will contribute to combined lists that will be offered every April, June, and October. Grove will join the group in June. So basically what happens...
This is that meeting I was at AWP, or at Winter Institute.
So basically they send out this, curated list of, and I haven't actually, I'm certain I got this email from these people and then didn't pay attention to it. April's list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 titles from the 3 publishers, not yet Grove, and they were all, backlist titles. Let me see.
Although, yeah, backlist is one of them is fucking Days of Abandonment.
Well,
that's like backlist and like it's backlist, but it's also like it's not like the backlist of like well, here's an obscure title that you might not remember from Europa editions.
Right. So basically the idea is that me as a bookseller, if I order all of these books...
You have to order all of them.
I believe so. I'm not really sure. I mean, they can't force you to. That's certainly...
You can't win the $500, though.
Well, that's the issue. So you're encouraged to order all of them, put them on display under the rubric, the theme, whatever it is. Okay, this one was quick reads, which... Okay. Basically, they're providing a way for you to put up a display in your store.
Yeah. It's like Reading the World, but with a new branded.
Sure. But it's also, one, it's not all translated stuff. And it's not, none of these are going to come from the large presses, right? So I understand the impetus to the publishers, and I do definitely, although this would not be something like I would ever need, like we have all these books, right? Or we have most of these books in the section, and, we sell these things, and that's fine. I'm not going to put up, if I were to put up a display of quick reads, I would want to choose from many more publishers, across the board and that sort of thing. So I'm not really sure how this is going to play out in bookstores because of that factor. Like, I don't know, if you agree to do this thing and want to participate in the prize, you're sort of limiting yourself in terms of what you can put in your display, it would seem to me.
Yeah.
And to me, that would be like a barrier to participating in something like this. But it might be for a lot of bookstores who are sort of strapped for time and headspace to make displays and wanting to do something different. Maybe they're feeling like they don't have enough independent press stuff in the store, and this is an easy sort of entryway, I think, for booksellers and bookstores to sort of start bringing that stuff in and introduce it to their customers without it seeming overwhelming. And how do you go through all these big backlist catalogs from all these publishers you're just now getting familiar with, et cetera, et cetera. So while it's probably not a thing that a store like mine would use, I definitely understand that for some stores and for these publishers, it could be a good, useful tool to introduce stores to their titles, to their backlist especially.
Yep. I hate the IPC, like straight up, and I don't care if anyone hears that. Did you see who won the first thing for this? The
Oh, I didn't
first
realize.
display prize was Curious Iguana Books in Frederick, Maryland, for their Women in Translation display. That was the first. That was the first playlist.
Ah, okay. Uh, oh God, I'm looking at a photo of that, and they spell translation very
I
strangely.
was waiting for you to say that. I was hoping you would see this because we're all in the same article. So they spelled translation. Okay, lowercase Transl, A with the long A, capital
Hmm.
S, capital H, and then in parentheses En. So it's like translation,
But they wanted to get the she in there.
the she in there. But wouldn't you make then the E capitalized? Why is the E not? Why is the E that way?
I believe that's a phonetic
But
use of.
but I thought the phonetic use is the upside down, the schwa, where it's the upside down E.
I don't think it's a schwa sound though.
I don't think so either. But I don't know that that's a phonetic thing.
I don't know. It's only like half phonetic. It's very
It's
strange.
it's very strange. It's and it looks like someone just got kidnapped because it's all in like weird in that typeface where you cut out letters and put them all together.
Yes.
Like I'm not certain I feel safe here.
Yeah.
Like,
Anyway,
whatever. Good for them. They've found a way to band together and become the second tier of publishers who can control various markets. I applaud them for using their money and power to like benefit their backlist successfully and to make sure that most bookstores, as many bookstores as possible, can look all identical. It's a very proud thing to be part of.
you're being very cynical about it, but
Yep. The IPC I cannot stand. Cannot stand. Cannot abide by. Like I was at that meeting. I've learned a lot more since then. I find it distasteful. So I'm out on that. So anything that they're associated with, I find equally distasteful. But good for them. I'm glad that the four presses can make this thing happen. And I'm sure they really need the sales. They really need the support from all these places that already support them very heavily. They're almost the same, although not as bad as the Random Penguin House loyalty program, which we had not talked about.
I don't know anything. Oh, are you talking about the selling direct to customers?
It's not even selling direct to customers. If you buy a book, any book, from anywhere that's a Penguin Random House book, you can verify your purchase online, and then after you buy 12 books, they give you a free thing.
Okay,
Let me
really?
see what you earn points. So you earn points. The majority of Penguin Random House titles are eligible for points. To ensure the title is eligible before you purchase it, check the book detail page. If it says earn points on this purchase, then it counts. And then you can, how do you submit your proof of purchase? You keep your receipt, log into your dashboard, enter books, fill out the form fields. You need the ISBN, date of purchase, retailer name, store order number, retailer, whatever. And then you get points for it. And then once you have 120 points, which is 12 books, I don't know why they don't just call it 12. Why every book is worth 10 points makes it extra confusing. You're issued a rewards code, which is available for something $30 on their website.
It seems like, I mean, at least they're doing it so you can buy it anywhere.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, there is that, but it's just very strange. They really like they have so many fucking imprints.
It's like literally like 75% of the marketplace. Like, okay, like like every book counts.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And then it's just I don't know who's going to think of checking that.
I don't know. So I
mean,
think someone will.
someone will.
Someone will. Monthly program. And I'm sorry for being negative about the indie playlist thing. I'm sure it is really good. I'm sure that some people will really enjoy it. I'm cynical about it because I watched them put this whole for-profit organization into place in which everyone should be paying money to help support this initiative, and it benefits a very select group of publishers. And I feel like that's the whole thing's a bit dishonest, especially when it's trying to replicate. There's a whole history that I can't talk about. That's off. That's not public knowledge. So there's a little bit of a backstory that makes it a little bit less cool too. But I apologize to everyone listening. Anyone participating in it, you're all great. I'm glad that your books are getting out there. I think it's fine. It's a good idea. It's nice to give people something simple They don't have to make decisions because people can't make decisions very well, especially if there's too many choices. So something that's very streamlined like this will be very effective. And a lot of bookstores that are like mom and poppy bookstores that probably carry most but not all of these books, but are like very, very looking for easy to fill content will probably be on board with it. So you're right. I was being mean about it. I apologize.
I didn't say you're being mean. I said you're being cynical.
Yeah, it's real hard for me with that group. It's real hard. There was another thing. So we had those things. I have this thing that's sitting here. What else? I know what I was going to talk about too. So this is related to cynical and to my general overall uneasiness in life on a daily basis is that Stanford is going to stop supporting its university press entirely.
I saw this, or rather, I saw a lot of tweets about supporting university presses, basically.
So the Stanford Press brings in about $5 million a year in book sales, a sum that is impressive compared to sales of many scholarly publishers. But it is also dependent on support from the university, which in recent years has provided $1.7 million annually. Provost whatever told the Faculty Senate Persis Drell, that's an interesting name. Provost Persis Drell told the Faculty Senate Thursday that the university was ending that funding. She cited a tight budget ahead due to smaller than anticipated payout coming from the endowment. The endowment is worth more than $26 billion and is the fourth largest in American higher education. Drell told the group of faculty leaders recently that she considers the press quote-unquote second rate and that many of its series could be pruned, according to some present at the meeting. The comments angered many professors who consider the press to be a point of pride. The Stanford spokesman declined to comment on the reports that the provost called the press second rate or to elaborate on her comments to the faculty senate. Ellen Harvey, director of the press, declined to comment. They publish 130 books a year, known for the fields of Middle Eastern studies, Jewish studies, business, literature, and philosophy. And they've done other like long-term scholarly efforts, blah, 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 blah. So that's disconcerting to me. This shaded, I read this right before we started and shades my opinion on everything of like, that terrifies me. Like nothing else. This is the future of nonprofits is that they will not exist. As places pull out their money. Obviously, we are at a university in which the university does support us and continues to support us. But yes, as this shows, you never know.
Well, yeah, it's always tenuous, right? Like you feel like every few years you're sort of up for reassessment of your worth, right? Like
my contracts expire. Like they're renewed every so often on like a 5-year or 3-year basis. So yeah, and at that moment in time, there's no. Until that's renewed, I don't have a guarantee that I would have a job. And if I don't have a job, then the press probably doesn't exist. Like if they ended both of those simultaneously. So I'm always worried. And something like this is a crazy bad signal. Like when you have the fourth largest endowment, and I mean that $1.7 million seems like a lot, but in the scheme of higher education, it's not that huge.
Oh, no. Compared to, that's a lot. That's a piddling amount of their annual budget. She is making a lot of bad faith arguments if she's trying to argue that it doesn't that it can't afford to support the university press. That is just bullshit. Yeah. Straight up. She doesn't want to give it money for whatever fucking reason. She doesn't want to give it money, and that's all there is to it. Which sucks because she has apparently the authority and the power to do so.
Okay, I've got a question for you. How much does Stanford's football coach get paid annually?
Who is the coach now? Does it matter?
Does not matter. David Shaw?
I don't know who that is. $3 million a year, probably.
4.1.
There you go.
More than double that amount that they're giving to Stanford University Press to do 130 books a year.
He could go 3-10, and they would fire him and still have to pay him.
Yeah, they doubled his salary in 2014.
Yeah. There's your priorities.
That's what Stanford cares about. Stanford, that Duke of the East or Duke of the West, or whatever they're supposed to be.
Ivy of the West.
Ivy of the West. Yeah. Duke is the Ivy of the South. Isn't the Ivies just the Duke of the Ivies? Anyways, did you see this crazy thing about the white supremacists taking over politics and prose?
Yes, I did. Of course.
Wow, that was terrifying.
Yeah, it's funny. Someone texted me yesterday and said, "What would you do if that happened to you?" And I was like, "Oh, we would have no patience. They wouldn't even get in the door. I would not allowing that.
Yeah.
There's no way. Fuck that."
Yeah. Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, there's a reading by author Jonathan Metzl at Politics and Prose for Independent Bookstore Day, and a group of white supremacists came in shouting, "This land is our land." And they were also, the group was caught on video with their leader saying, you would have the white working class trade their homeland for handouts, but we, as nationalists, as identitarians, fuck that word, can offer the workers of this country a homeland, our birthright, in addition to healthcare, good jobs, and so forth. They then marched from the store shouting AIM, the American Identity Movement, which was formerly a hate group known as Identity Europa, but with a V for the U. I think you should still say Europa. I don't understand. I'm not
Yeah.
very up to date on white supremacy.
They also had a megaphone, which is how they were relaying a lot of this information to the audience that was there.
It's funny that megaphones still exist.
Well, okay. So
They're important.
they're worried about getting shouted down, which
Yeah.
is a very common thing. At protests where, one of these idiots starts talking and then like 10, you know, opposing protesters will just circle them and fucking yell at the top of their lungs, which is great. It's very effective.
Yeah.
So yeah, megaphones.
I hope they're like those old cheerleader ones that aren't even electronic. They're just like the tube.
Right.
Just like a big cardboard tube.
The weird thing to me is that they got back to where the event was.
Yeah.
I mean, were they polite? How did they get?
They said it was
Like I
10
said-
people marched through the door.
Like my space is different. Where like I would see them coming like a good
Yeah.
minute before they got to my front door, and would just meet them out there and be like, "Yeah, you're not coming in." But it's weird that they just like sort of got in no problem without. I don't know. I guess if you're the manager there, you probably don't want to start a confrontation, but that doesn't mean you can't stand in front of them and say, "We don't want you in here." I mean, you have the right to do that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it says for safety reasons, bookselling staff did not intercede, nor did Metzl, who had just begun a presentation on his book, Dying of Whiteness. I can see that. I could see I can't remember the layout of that Politics and Prose or where the events would be, but like if it wasn't set up, like your store is very, the entrance way and like where things would be are like right there. Like it'd be hard to miss, obviously. But like in bigger stores, I can imagine like when they're laid out differently, like you could come in and just be in the store and then walk towards the event. Right. And like that, then between like coming in the store and the walking toward the event, anyone watching would be uncertain whether they should stop you from doing something or if this group of people just came into the store for Independent Bookstore Day.
Right. Yeah, especially an independent bookstore at that store is probably already a madhouse. So
yeah, and people who are political in DC, like everyone's looking political in DC. And I don't know, it doesn't identify that they were wearing like, Nazi uniforms or anything like that. So it could have been people who just looked normal and then just like flash mobby style just all went on the stage or went towards the stage yelling their stuff. Insane. There's a lot of weird races. So there's also that novel from Dzanc Books that was that they pulled because it was Islamophobic, the Siege of Tel Aviv. Yeah. That happened this week. A lot of crazy things.
Yes.
Including the Mueller report.
Including the Mueller report, which we do not carry. So.
And nobody's asked you for it?
No one's asked for it. But...
I find that kind of amazing. Do you think people are reading it? Yes.
I think if people are interested, they're just reading the free versions that are online.
That's what I was thinking too. But yesterday, our friend Alex Shepard, who's been on the friend of the podcast, former guest of the podcast, wrote a whole article about this, about how who was it? Simon Schuster did it first, right? Scribner, working at the Washington Post, brought out a printed edition, and then editions from independent publishers Skyhorse and Melville House, the former including an introduction from Trump defender Alan Dershowitz, and the latter a People's Edition, in the publisher's words, with no extraneous material, will be released this week. Several publishers had put out electronic editions within 24 hours of the redacted report's April 18th release by the Department of Justice. It's no surprise that the publisher spent sleepless nights pushing the report to print. It's very complicated, but shortly after the report was released, released, these 3 editions held the top 3 places on Amazon's sales rankings. All 3 stayed in the top 10 for the next week, with Scribner's edition holding its own against Michelle Obama's historic bestseller, Becoming. These 3 editions are also continuing to do well against an increasingly crowded field of cobbled-together self-published editions, including one by special counsel Target and nonsensical plot point Carter Page. Audible, the Amazon-owned audiobook juggernaut, raced to record a 19-hour audiobook of the report, which was released for free, possibly because nobody could possibly want to listen to a 19-hour redaction-laden government document, last Monday. Demand was so high for the bound editions of the reports that some independent bookstores began printing and selling their own copies hours after the release. This is wild. And and his whole thing is like, this is just like the Trump of publishing, where it's like this short-term cash grab sort of idea. And that Trump books sell really well. So like anything that does that, you can make money on. And like, it's kind of a weird switch for publishers to be so concerned with.
I don't think that's true. I mean, the Bush era was equally, glutted with books of this ilk.
Here's his thing. I was trying to find this paragraph as I was babbling there. The result, however, is an industry addicted to the quick Trump fix, and an industry that is rapidly moving away from one of its seminal strengths. The point of nonfiction books is to offer something you can't get on television or the internet. The long lead times of production work that go into book publishing are meant to allow for added value and perspective. What we're getting now, however, more often than not, are books that are essentially pricier, glossier versions of stuff we already get day in, day out in an endless stream on cable news and on social media. The publication of the Mueller report is, to some extent, the apex of this trend, an officially free report, repackaged and sold for $15. This is not much different than the majority of the Trump content being sold for twice that amount. This is not to say that Trump hasn't been a welcome all-you-can-eat Sunday bar for cash-strapped publishers in a time when they need a sugar daddy. It's just a pity that the money they'll bring in will only pay for more books about Donald Trump. That's what I was looking for as I was babbling.
I would not carry this because, it's free online, and it should be because it's a government, document. Which is not to say that like Melville House putting it in book form is not a welcome thing. I don't know. I don't feel the need to participate in that economy is kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. But it is, I can see like Alex's point to some degree of like he goes through a list of all these books that are related to Trump that sold very well, and that like a lot of other things are down so far. Fiction's down 20%. Lots of other things are suffering. So this becomes like the panacea of like, let's just do these sort of things and rush them out because that's the quick fix. And it is, I guess, I can see where it's disconcerting as a global trend, but like, who can blame them in a way? Yeah,
it's hard to blame them. It's just people can only read one thing at a time, right? And so buying these books means they're not buying a different book. And that's where it's frustrating, is that so much of what's being created in the nonfiction world is sort of focused on this one thing at this time, which is not to say it's not an important thing. I mean, the guy is a fucking monster and he's in charge of the free world. So let's talk about it. But there are other things and other, more nuanced, I think, sort of ways to talk about it than the ones that have been bestsellers, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I was at the bookstore at Schuler Books and Music when the Star Report was released, and was printed immediately super fast in the same exact way. And I'm trying to remember the exact thing. It was I want to say that we sold 500 copies in the first day. It was something like that.
The internet was not nearly as pervasive.
I was trying to find the date of this, and it's making me feel very old and very scared.
It's 99.
I know. Yeah, but I was trying to see if it was like what month it was. And
April or May, I think. No,
that sounds right to me too. Because I feel like that's right. But it was earlier in the year. But early 1999, and it was wild. So the internet was dial up.
Sure. Yes.
No one was released there, but it was not convenient. The printouts were terrible. Like it was all POD stuff at the time when POD was really like just starting. So it was like very poor production qualities on these printed books. And yet people were like, yep, whatever. I want it. Must have it.
Yeah.
We're on the news for that.
And then, all right, you had one other thing you wanted to talk about?
I have two things. One, well, let me save the last one to the end because it's going to be like a shout out. So I have found this article that just popped up on like my news feed that is called Publishing 2025: A Vision. And I was like, that's interesting. I write about future publishing stuff a lot. I'm very curious as to like what this might be. So I'm going to read these things to you and see. And there's a few reactions that we kind of talked about last time. One, 2025 is not long from now. Like that's not a very like things aren't going to change super radically in 5 years probably. But whatever. And also I was like looking through, I was like, well, okay. So here are the 5 predictions about, this is in the bookseller. This is like the UK's PW, right? Here are 5 predictions about what successful publishers will look like in 2025. And I want to get your reaction on a scale of 1 to 10 over how like shocking this might be, and then a different number on how likely it is. 1, they'll have diverse readers, authors, and staff.
Okay. Do we not now? I mean, staff, probably not. But
Probably
everything
not.
else.
But they say we're not seeing broad representation. 90% of the employees are white. In a business where acquiring editors champion books that speak to them, staff of publishers is not the future where everyone is representative. It'll be problematic. So that one I'd say not surprising. Like, yeah, everything's moving in that direction, and it would probably be more likely that the staff will be more diverse by then. But I feel like the readership is fairly diverse right now. I feel like the books available could be much more diverse, and if you did like an actual number study, it would probably be way heavily like white, straight, male centric. But there is like a lot of lists that you look at. You see a lot of good books that are coming out from diverse voices that are getting a lot of attention. So I feel like it is moving that way. So this is in no way surprising to me, and very likely.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, WeStock is incredibly diverse, and our readers, our customers are incredibly diverse, and it just takes a little bit of effort to find these things. But yeah, they are out there. They are definitely out there, much more than they were even 10 years ago. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, 2, they'll flee expensive cities and move more of their operations online.
What was the first part of that?
They'll flee expensive cities and move more of their operations online. In the next 5 years, publishers will leave New York and London, and new publishing hubs will crop up in smaller cities.
To be online? I don't quite understand.
So what they're saying is that people will live... So technology... Let me read the other paragraph here. Technology has changed how we work, and now proximity is much less critical than it used to be. A literary agent can Skype with a publisher across the country without having to jump on a train. Real estate in London and New York is astronomically expensive, and salaries in publishing are abysmally low, so it no longer makes sense for us to gather in these expensive major cities. So they're saying people keep their job, living in small... New employees will stay living in small areas, and everything will be done online.
Okay, but how will everything be done online? You still have to print books.
Yeah, I think that they mean just like the internal workings of the publishing house. So like you don't have an office. You have everyone working out of coffee shops where they pay for their $8 tea and Skype.
So it'll be
Slack all the time. Everything will be Slack. Yeah, it'll be decentralized.
So it's just going to be decentralized in terms of offices. I think that's a terrible prediction because that is not going to happen.
So you're saying low prediction and low likelihood and surprising.
I don't think there's no evidence to support that this is going to happen even remote. Like there's just not going to happen. If anything, and I do think there was a chance that this could have happened a few years ago, and I think publishing sort of missed its opportunity, was the idea that they could have just fled New York and said, fuck it, we're going to go set up shop in like whatever, Providence, right?
Philadelphia.
But there's so many in Minneapolis. There's, more and more that aren't in New York. But I feel like what we have at this point is what we have. No one's going to leave New York.
I think that they're conflating two things here. One being that the real estate expenses are pricey, which is true, but they're not thinking of the efficiency of the contacts. So like there's a reason that everyone's in Minneapolis is because there's funding. So the money you could have no employees in Minneapolis and have them all decentralized, but you wouldn't get funding for it. And that would defeat the whole purpose. And there is a certain advantage to be gained to being in New York and in central hubs. And even if you think that you could have like smaller hubs, it's not going to you're going to miss out on enough stuff. Like the Los Angeles publishing scene seems like very distant to New York. And like if that's what this thing is suggesting, maybe it works better in the UK, where you can have people in Sheffield and London and Brighton or in whatever other Huddersfield town. I don't know where that is, but they have a soccer team. They like wherever those things are. Maybe you can, because you can get on a train if you need to, and there's not a problem of moving books around quite the way that there is here.
Right. I mean, let's also know, yeah, in New York, it's where all the agents are. It's where a great number of writers are, just because there's so much that isn't book related that is interesting about New York, right? I mean, it's the largest art scene in the world. It's, so many other things, independent movies and just everything going on there, music and whatever. People love living there, and it's hard to blame them, apart from the cost. So yeah, it's going to be very difficult to uproot publishing from New York City. Very difficult.
Yeah. And London, probably, for that matter. Because London's nice. So 3, they'll be community driven and connect with readers beyond the pages. Readers love to talk about their favorite books and discover new ones. I'm going to try not to read this in the Chad voice that makes everything sound stupid, but it's hard. Readers love to talk about their favorite books and discover new ones. The Bookstagram hashtag has almost 30 million posts, and some booktubers have hundreds of thousands of followers. Goodreads has over 80 million members who have added 2.3 billion books to their virtual shelves. But in general, publishing doesn't excel at using digital tools to connect with readers or to connect readers with authors. Publishers pay a premium to sign writers who have substantial platforms. Instead, they should be paying great writers. It should be teaching great writers how to build an audience to share their messages. The internet is a multimedia playground, and savvy publishers will create toolkits to take advantage of that.
Okay. They've been trying to do this for fucking 10 years and failed.
I've talked about our fucking mission statement and initial strategic plans are about being reader centric versus being a traditional publishing operation in which you keep things at a distance. And that's always been part of that. And this is not new. I have a diagram. Sitting across from me, a placemat from a conversation I had with a publisher in France about restructuring publishing along this way of being more community oriented or reader oriented, or however you want to put it, which is basically what this is with new terminology. It's not new. And most publishers are bad at it. They have like the Penguin Random House loyalty program. That's how they're connecting with their readers.
Right. Or they have a corporate Twitter account, which no one gives a shit about, right? Like,
yeah.
Here's the problem. And I think it's a good thing, quite frankly, is that most writers are not necessarily great online presences and promoters of their work. And it's because they're spending a lot of time thinking about craft and writing, right?
Yeah.
It's a different sort of personality. It's a different sort of just way of engaging with the world. And to think that like publishers are going to create, quote, toolkits to teach them how to do this is just utter bullshit. It's just never going to happen. And so, yes, the promotion of the books is going to fall to corporate entities, not the writers themselves. And the idea that this is all going to change somehow magically, again, people have been trying for a long time to do this, right? Like when you sign a contract with Random House, like they're insisting that you get on Twitter and Instagram and start building your platform, right? If you haven't done it. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't feel organic, and readers and the book community know that, and they find their own ways of talking to each other about books, but engaging with the writers themselves or the publishers has proven a very difficult thing, because it's still like, I love Hamilton Nolan has this great article. It's, in the archives of Gawker or whatever, a brand is not your friend.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like no one wants to become friends with a Random House. They want to become friends with the writers. If the writers aren't necessarily equipped to do that, then it's just not going to work.
Yeah. I have 2 things related to that. One, so the last line of this is publishers must build direct relationships with readers and make it feel delightful, which is a thing.
God.
I told you I try not to read this like I was making fun of it. I feel like I succeeded. The second thing is, did you see this 538 statistic or significant digit about 80% of tweets?
No.
Okay, so 80% of all tweets from American adults come from just 10% of American adult Twitter users.
Wow.
Yeah. And that feels very true. Like, that's the sort of thing that you sort of sense in the background of your subconscious. And then when you see it written out, you're like, you're right. My feed is that.
Oh, that's gross.
That's the world we live in. So number 4, This one is right up my alley. So we'll see where this goes. Publishers will use data to guide their thinking without letting it dictate their choices. Publishers must work to own and understand their own data. They might use social media, but that data and their relationships are owned by Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Blah, blah, blah. Kickstarter, my employer, helps creators build communities and raise funds for creative projects such as books, bookstores, and festivals. I'm still not seeing where the data is. As publishers, we should invest time and energy in platforms that let us build that kind of relationship with and understanding of our readers, and deprioritize platforms that lock down data or make us pay to reach our own audiences. That includes Amazon. This retailer owns some of the most precious information that exists in the publishing world, and they refuse to share, drawing on what they know about our successes to fuel theirs. Instead of pandering to their data hoarding, we must build direct connections with readers and gather our own.
What was the point of all that?
Data will guide your thinking as a publisher without letting it dictate your choices.
What did anything that you said about Kickstarter or whatever have anything to do with that?
I don't fucking know. I think her point is that that most of the data that would be available to help publishers be better at working with consumers and making decisions about their business is not something that we have access to. That the forums as they're set up, the data that's being generated, the user interactions, all that stuff is going solely to the confines of Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, Goodreads. All that stuff is staying there, and that we need to find new ways to be able to like connect and gather data on our own that we can use for our decisions, that isn't proprietary.
Okay. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck. That one's just like I love data more than most people, and that one made me giggle. Okay, 5, last one. They'll publish in many formats and diversify their revenue streams. Okay, let me see if I can find one takeaway from this.
Are they already doing that?
Yeah, okay. So publishers should experiment with creating and packaging their work so that people can read or listen to it in 10 to 30-minute blocks. Startups such as Serial Box, Radish, and Wattpad have been experimenting with the serial format with great success. Most Books has created tiny books that readers can slip into their pockets, and Tor.com publishes novellas digitally and in small paperbacks. Publishers could publish these and even shorter works in e-editions. They would be cheap to acquire, edit, and produce, so publishers could sell them inexpensively to let a reader take a risk on a new voice. Publishers must also diversify into new revenue streams and funding models. The typical book sales model of investing in a book years before the publication date and not being paid till months afterwards, if the book sells and copies aren't returned, is a terrible model. It puts far too much risk on the publisher, which then outsources some of the risk to authors in the form of lower advances. Kickstarter, of course, offers a very different approach. I'm starting to feel like this is maybe a plug for Kickstarter.
Okay. Yeah, how does Kickstarter offer a different model?
You get the money up front with lots of people investing in you? She doesn't explain that. But apparently there's a conference that's being streamed. I think I got duped. I thought this was like a legit article. I think it's an ad. If you're interested in collaborating with colleagues around the world to design the future of publishing, join the next page, Creating the Future of Publishing Conference, www.kickstarter.com/conferences, which will be streamed live for free on May 11th.
I don't understand. Okay, look, I don't think, there's so much to argue with about that last one.
If we started making like little books, like you guys would get fucked. Like, I mean, not us. I mean, but if if people started doing like those little e-editions and like making everything in these 10 to 30-minute blocks, like Medium, like that's one of the things that drives me crazy about Medium is like that it tells you how many minutes it's going to take you to read an article. Like you've got 6 minutes left. I don't know why, it just bugs me. But I feel like that would be counter to like a lot of like the book selling industry. Not just the publishers are like wacky and our publishing model money, it doesn't work right, because that's true. It is very disconnected. It's very nonlinear in a sense, but like the like at least there's like a lot of latency. You pay a lot of money up front and you don't get the rewards for a very long time. But the idea of like just pumping out little 30-minute packages of stuff seems silly.
What does that even mean? I don't quite understand.
I think it's like those. Have you seen those? You probably don't shop at like grocery. This makes no sense. Have you seen the book shots thing from James Patterson?
No. Book shots. No.
So they have them in grocery stores. Like even Wegmans has them, and they're like they're like very short. They're like short novellas that James Patterson and a co-author write that are supposed to be like so that you can read them in basically one sitting, and they're like $4 or something, and they're sold in grocery stores like that because people don't want a real book; they just want like a quick little shot.
Okay. I mean, I have nothing wrong with short books. It's just,
This is a little bit more sinister than that, I think.
yes, this sounds like they're trying to take Gravity's Rainbow and somehow make it into
Yeah.
49 different individual products or something. I don't
Or
know.
what they do is it's a story inspired by Gravity's Rainbow, and it's just one little 30-page book that they sell for $3, and you can ignore Gravity's Rainbow.
Right, which is also, I mean, I don't know where the audience is for these things. What I was going to say is,
They're
I
selling
really,
hundreds of thousands.
I really wish that, as in the UK, American publishers did the different formats at the same time.
Oh, you mean
Paperback,
like a hardcover and a paperback?
yeah.
Yeah, that would be
Because
cool.
we have a hard time selling hardcovers to our customers, who are mostly, if I had to say, like younger adult professionals, who don't want to spend $30 on a hardcover book, you know. So there's a lot of things I think that if they were immediately brought out in paperback or even like a month later, we would sell a lot of copies of it. So
Yeah.
I do wish that model would change, but I know that's never going to happen.
Yeah, we might actually go back to doing a book, like a lead title every season that's in paper over board. That would be like $22.
That's not prohibitively expensive. I'm talking
Right.
more like the $30 hardcovers that
And they
are.
might even be cheaper than that because the first two we want to do are fairly short. But I'm thinking of like a much bigger one. So this publishing 2025. I'm tempted to tune into this conference because I'm curious curious to see how Kickstarter is rewriting the rules of publishing. But also, like, I feel like I totally got duped.
So May 11th conference on what is it? Publishing.
It's called the next page, creating the future of publishing conference. All those words are capitalized, so I assume publishing conference is what you're creating the future of. But whatever, words don't have to mean things.
Creating. Okay, here we go.
So while you look that up, I have a great story about a book, but I'll save it for next time. If anyone listens to the 2-month review, the episode that comes out tomorrow does release some information about a book that I was very nervous about talking about until now. And I was even going to delete it from tomorrow's podcast because I didn't want anyone to know about it. But it looks like all the rights are worked out. Everything's agreed to. So I feel a little bit more comfortable about it. And it's a story that I think will interest you, Tom, and will interest this audience. But I'll save it for next week because we don't have a lot of time. But I do want to give a shout out. So like usually about our rants and raves part, this is something I can't adequately rave about. However, we got a special thing in the mail. It was sent to me, but it says, as a longtime listener to 3% Podcast, I thought that you and Tom would really like this book. And it's from the author whose name is Louis Lüthi. And I think that's how you pronounce it. It's L-U with an umlaut, T-H-I. And it's a book called L. And what I can make out of it so far is that it's a book that's about all books that begin with just a letter. So like V or like S by John Updike, I by Stephen Dixon, C by Tom McCarthy, B by Eva Figgis, G by John Berger. There's a whole list of them in here. Z by Vasilis Vasilikovas, and it's a really pretty like book, and it has a lot of cool covers, like A by Andy Warhol all in full color, A by Zukowski, all these like full color old school images. W by George Prek is another one. Of like the covers, and it's like it looks like an interesting book that's sort of about that stuff. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I just wanted to say like thank you for sending this to us, and it does look really cool and looks like a very interesting sort of like art meets Olympian meets meditation on books that all relate to one letter. And it's very short. It's like 98 pages, 100 pages, and it's called the technical name of it is A Die with 26 Faces. Published by Roma Publications in collaboration with the Lectorat Art and Public Space, Gerrit Riewald Academy in Amsterdam. Versions of this appeared in the Serving Library, so on and so forth. And it just came out this year. But it's really interesting looking.
It is. I'm very curious how they tie all these books together because they don't really have anything.
Well, if you want, I can read you a paragraph, but I'm not going to do that. I'll just send you a picture, and you can see like what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And I think it'll make sense that it's not really tying them all together, but it's like about these books and about it seems to be also possibly about like letters and language. The main impulse behind this, no, I'll save it. I'll save it. I'll send it to you later. I'll send you a page, but it talks about like alphabet books and books with letters for titles, which is taken from Ulysses, and uh, it goes on. But I'll save it for when I have a chance to read it. I think in June, so May for 3%, all the posts are going to be about graphic novels in translation because I have to read a bunch of books for a contest that I'm judging, so I don't have time to read like more normal books. So I'm reading a bunch of graphic novels in translation from Drawn and Quarterly and New York Review Books and interviewing a few people. And then in June, I'm planning on reading books from my friends, which is dangerous because I tend not to do that very often. But they won't be books that are translated. They'll be books that friends have written, like Ryan Chapman, our friend. This guy who's now a friend since he sent this book. And I plan on writing about all of those for 3% in June so I can finally like just read books that are by people I like Mark Haber's new book, and maybe we can have some of those people on here to talk about their stuff too.
Right. I mean, if there's nothing, it's quieter in the publishing world at that time anyway. So
I know. I thank God. I cannot wait. There's my penultimate class is in 10 minutes, and I cannot wait for the semester to be over.
yeah, I thought you were done. That's why I was unclear about what time we were.
It never ends, man. It never ends. Tomorrow's my last class. I have to finish telling the lost story because I told most of it yesterday, but I only got to halfway through the entirety of how insane that whole experience was and all the ramifications and all the few ways that you can talk about marketing and how things are user interactive and all the like theoretical and more interesting stuff. I couldn't get to it because I had to lay out the whole plot first of like all the various pieces I need in place. So I have like one more class of like 45 minutes of talking about that, and then I am just grading papers. And then I'm going to be in New York, and then I'm going to be in Norway, and then I'm going to be in New York, and then I'm going to be in Vermont, and then I'm going to take a break.
Good for you. I'm sure people are all rooting for you to get a break.
No, I don't think so.
I don't have any rants or raves. We have Lucy Ives coming in the store in a couple weeks, so I'm about to start reading that book. After last week's crazy schedule of Independent Bookstore Day and many other things that we had scheduled at the store, it's good to finally have a little space to breathe. This will probably be released on May 1st, which is of course May Day, where we are closed in honor of and in solidarity with the workers of the world. I encourage more businesses to be closed and paid holiday for your employees. They would appreciate it. So yeah, I might go see the Avengers movie.
Oh, I've seen that. I took my kids on opening Thursday night. It's fun. They cried. They openly wept, shaking wept. Like I'll tell you afterwards because I don't want to spoil anything. But there's like one particular thing that my son just kept repeating that was like kind of heartbreaking, and like he was like very into like this one specific, very romantic aspect of like the ending of that movie, and they were just weeping. Like I didn't cry, but I was like, I get it. Like it's filmed emotionally, and if you treat it like any normal movie character, there are emotional beats that resonate. But it's pretty fun. It's long, but like and it's sort of slow in a way. But it's there's moments that are like, yeah, fuck yeah, I like this big sort of blockbustery thing. I'm a sucker for it.
Yeah, I like them if they're well done, and I feel like so far I'm on board with what I've seen from this franchise. It took me forever to see the last one, but
oh really?
Yeah. I want to see how it ends. I'm just curious. So
yeah, and it does. It's like unlike comics because it can end, so things end.
Right.
But yeah, I really liked Captain Marvel too. I just like her.
I haven't seen that movie.
It's not particularly breakthrough in any way or like doing anything that's super different than the other sort of tried and true Marvel movie formats. But I like her, and I like Brie Larson's character, and I like that it's like a badass woman doing it, and like it's cool. It's visually pretty cool.
Oh, I can't remember the last movie I saw in the theater. Oof.
Those are the only two I saw. I haven't gone in forever either.
Very depressing. All right.
Anyways, okay, well, we'll take off, and then you take off tomorrow. Go see Avengers for Workers' Day. for May Day, and we will be back in a couple weeks. One last thing, if anyone does hear this, I will be calculating all those. Remember the Hall of Fame voting for what writers would make the International Hall of Fame?
Yes.
I have all the numbers will be calculated and will be in the next post. I don't know if you will have a chance to get your vote in before I run the numbers, but if you're listening to this, go give it a shot. You can find it in the show notes. Depending on how quickly I can get this up, I might even be able to get it up today on Tuesday so that people have a little bit of time. But yeah, it'll that I'm gonna see what that all came out to be, so we can talk about that next time too.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Good.
Stay inside all this winter, filling out forms from a busted printer.